Hello, my name's Jill Heath, and I'm the president and CEO of Heart of America. Today, we are thrilled to be coming and sharing with you a bit about partnering with Native American communities to address systematic, decades-long education inequities. I'm joined today by my friend Mylo Fowler, who is the spark that ignited a multi-phase partnership. So Mylo and I had the great fortune of meeting about 2 years ago. While in Navajo Nation on a discovery trip, we were pulled aside by one of the clinicians on Navajo Nation in one of the remote hospitals. And he asked us, "Do you know who Navajo Mylo is?" And I turned to my partner there and said, "Navajo Mylo? No, tell us more." He pulled up his phone, went to Instagram, and showed us the incredible work that Mylo was doing. So from very early on, being part of the reservation, he knew he needed to help with basic resources, whether it was water, firewood, power, and now school supplies. This was the way and how we came together to work throughout the pandemic and make a difference in almost 8,000 lives. Mylo, welcome.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. In a very large setting like this, we always introduce ourselves the traditional way, which I learned from my great grandparents and my grandparents, which is yeah. Tobahon shlon kent chitni bashes chin na kaidene dashe chedo honalan e dashe nala die hota e stin shla. Elkena e shal ya e kade Mylo Fowler e dashe jine. So what I shared with you were my clans in Navajo, my language, my first language, and greetings to you, my relatives. And long ago I was given the name Mylo Fowler, and that's what I go by. So I'm excited to be here and to share more with you.
Thank you, Mylo. As you can tell, Mylo is not only steeped in his culture and his tribal history, but he is an incredible community activator and has a vast network. Tell us a little about the partners that you introduced and pulled in, Swinnerton, and the cascading effect with so many of other partners.
I think cascading is a good word to use. An avalanche might be better, but it's been amazing how this all started. This started by 3 years ago. I installed a solar kit on a family's home in just south of Navajo Mountain, which is one of the most remote locations in the lower 48, excluding Alaska. And when the pandemic hit, I thought about these two little girls. How are they going to get to school? How are they going to learn? Because they ride a bus there, and they don't have the internet. And at that point, I reached out to Swinnerton Renewable Energy, and I said, "Hey, look, like I don't have my nonprofit started. It's a lot of work. I don't have time. I'd rather dive into finding a solution now than try to figure that out." And so I said, if you guys could send the money you want to give me to Heart of America, we can do the exact same thing. And that was really done, I believe, within like 2 or 3 days.
Yep.
And off we were. And so Swinnerton Renewable Energy was one of our very first big partners, along with the Real Salt Lake Foundation. And so immediately after the very first week, we were mind blown by how fast this was going. And we continued to reach out to other schools and found that the need was very similar just about anywhere we went. And so we assured these teachers and the principals and the faculty that we want to help, and in what ways can we help. And so there were some variances from one school district to another. And within about 2 to 3 months, we were regularly shipping things all over the place, getting them here to the Real Salt Lake Stadium at Rio Tinto, and packing there with volunteers. And it was just amazing to see the flood of volunteers that wanted to help. Even though they weren't physically delivering these packets to the kids, they were assembling them, and it just went by so fast. And so all total, I believe now we're up to helping almost 8, 9, 10,000 students. I don't have the accurate number because again, it went by so fast. And I don't think I'll ever forget some of the conversations I had with some of the principals where, like on the Hopi reservation, Alma, oh, I'm forgetting her last name. However, she said, learning doesn't stop just because, school stops. Another superintendent in out by Tuba City, Arizona, she said, when the pandemic hit, essentially what we did was we had all the school buses come back, line up right outside, and we just told the students that they're going home. They had no idea why. And she just said, some of these students still have their backpacks here at the schools. They didn't know to take that with them. All they did was go home. And the impact was immediate when it came to helping these students continue to learn from home with these schools resources. And that was the most beautiful thing to see.
Absolutely. And Mylo, I remember the first two phases, as you mentioned, we were able to get out about 1,000 packs each phase, and pulling in different partners to help each phase. And so the first phase and the second phase really did come down from Utah down into the reservation. And then the phase 3 and 4 actually went up from New Mexico in the Santa Fe, Albuquerque area. So a large array of partners that actually came to us and stepping up, wanting to help. For instance, Real Salt Lake inspired the New Mexico United soccer team that then threw in help during phase 3 and 4 to pack and get the packs up to several of the pueblos and into the southern part of Navajo Nation. And what's amazing about Navajo Nation is it is a part of a Four Corners area that's the size of approximately Delaware, but the infrastructure just is not there. I think it only has, how many grocery stores, Mylo?
About 12.
Yeah, for the whole entire population. And how many tribal members are on the reservation approximately?
There's over, I believe, 450,000.
Yes. And out of those 450,000, about 10% are students, 46,000, give or take. And so, thinking about the numbers, getting education packs in the hands of 8 to 10,000 students and homes is huge, tackling about 25% plus of the student body population. What was also just amazing is how we were able to really kind of think through logistics. We had an organization called Angel Flight actually offer to bring and fly in packs. And I remember distinctly knowing, as you mentioned, that Kayenta was almost impossible to get into because of the restrictions, the curfews, and absolutely needed to respect that. But since we were deemed as an emergency education organization, we were able to thoughtfully go into the nation. Mylo, can you talk a little about how you were able to help us navigate that?
That was a very critical part of this these many phases now, because when we look at a family with multi generations living under the same roof and COVID affecting those, as in our culture, in our language, say the wise ones, the elders, we definitely wanted to minimize our impact of the possibility of doing something we didn't want to do, right? Have somebody bring COVID home. And so respecting the the spirit of the land was really important, because again, for our culture, our language is passed through a lot of oral stories. Our language finally became a written language in the late 90s. It's still a very young language. And so the knowledge keepers are those that are our elders, and we can't afford to lose them.
We've definitely learned along the way. When the initiative started and started snowballing, again, it was so important for us to listen and understand the needs of the beneficiaries and the tribal members and leaders, but also to have Mylo along with us. Learnings and best practices certainly played out. And a couple of those we'd like to highlight and share those lessons today. One of them is to be humble and curious and ensure that the work is guided by the community. And Mylo, you really helped us to understand that. Can you share a little more about the need and why that is so vitally important in this type of work?
It is critical, because when you realize and understand, maybe through photography, through video, the what the need really is, you would think that this we're helping people in a third, fourth world country, in some other place outside of America. However, this is right here in the Southwest, and we don't ask for much. I was never taught to ask for much. However, to work for much was really a big teaching I learned from my grandparents on the farm. However, I remember as a kid that I was always so mad whenever I saw my grandma and my grandpa give boxes of our fruit and our vegetables away to families because of the sweat and the work and the dirt it took to grow that.
Yeah.
And my grandmother taught me a valuable lesson when I was, I think, right around preschool. She said, "We can always give because we'll always be given more." And I never forgot that lesson. And so as we look at these children, the youth, they are the future. They're going to be at some point, having families. They're going to be at some point leaders in their own communities. And as we talk about an education gap, right now it's really an education canyon, if you would. And
Mhm.
so to be able to consider helping just one family, that's really how this whole project started. I just essentially thought about these two little girls, and that snowballed into something greater.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that's stuck with me through these last few months and year is the determination and how resilient your tribal communities are, and particularly Navajo Nation. Mylo, I'd love for you to talk about the children that would climb the mountain, or rather the foothill every day, the mesa.
Yeah, every school we visited, we always wanted again to understand you know, the demographic of where these students are, what are their conditions, what are some additional needs. If we come back, what could that look like? How can we help you more? And one common item was that there were many students that were riding the bus on regular school days. They were riding the bus from over an hour away, and so living in a rural area meant that you probably didn't have really good cell phone service. And in southern Utah, one teacher would basically carve out her evening away from her family just to make a phone call to a student. And so in and out here, we don't have cell phone service, we don't have 5G. And a lot of these families and students, it's amazing how their resilient spirit allows them to take measures into their own hands to try to learn. As you said, some drove into town, some drove into these other areas, and there are some families that even would hike up to hills and just make a makeshift wall out of like rocks, so that if it were windy, that was a little bit of a barrier. So at least the student was able to be on a phone call, or get some decent amount of hotspot service, so that there was that short connection with their teacher. And I think the teachers, their drive to figure out how to help these students was just incredible. They really, as most teachers do, they go above and beyond. However, to see it in this part of the pandemic was just phenomenal. I'm speechless right now, and all I can say to them is thank you for really doing what you did to help our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. They are the true heroes, along with so many, trying to support and lift them up and do almost the impossible of teaching in an equitable way. And I think that brings us to lesson number 2, which we've touched upon, and that is think local. That one size does not fit all. And as we just heard from Mylo, we worked with school districts that were quite well resourced and coordinated and may have access, the majority of their families access to at least broadband, power, water. And then some were very, very remote, like Navajo Mountain. And so understanding what is needed within that community, whether it was Hopi on the Hopi Reservation or Kayenta, Navajo Mountain, Bluff, Gallup, is essential.
Yeah, I think the surveys really were pretty helpful as we sent surveys out to those principals, and just really being there to let them know that, look, we want to help you. We know that this, I mean, generally this is what we do. However, how can we specialize this to fit your needs of your students and your faculty? And so, though the need was about this equivalent everywhere, there were some needed more PPE than others. Some needed, some really didn't need, any help because they were able to get Chromebooks somehow, through the Navajo tribe. And some communities had a little bit more electricity than others. And so solar usage was a lot more imperative in those areas too. So it definitely is not and hasn't been a one size fits all. And fortunately, knowing the reservation, growing up there, living there, that was, I think we had a great jump start. So yeah, if you have somebody that is on a community level, really ensure that they can provide the resources and the information to you. That's what I would recommend.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the word survey, and that was very much a part of our model and method, if you will, making sure that we were not only surveying needs and challenges, but also hopping on the phone and connecting through community members that Mylo already knew, and or some of the other tribal members knew. We had a great opportunity to connect with several state Bureau of Indian Affairs as well. And that leads us to lesson number 3. And that is, the more people found out about the work that was being done, not only did more want to help and be part of it, but it inspired involvement and further support, and really created a bigger movement. Mylo, anything more in terms of the power of stories and inspiring the movement?
I would say that I mean, I'm a photographer. You see a bunch of cameras behind me. Uh, I have way too many. However, I think Laura Dearden from the Real Salt Lake Foundation did an incredible job photographing and filming these phases we've done numerous times, and she was able to capture just stunning stories of everything we've been able to do, and to share that has been very has been a huge milestone, because we would always ask people, like, look, we're not asking for a tremendous donation, really. If you can even just $5, that's it, and through social media, through Facebook, Instagram, and then the other platforms out there, Twitter, we've been able to just generate these very kind small donations that make a tremendous impact. And the photography, the video behind it has been a fulfillment of those donations, and it's just been so wonderful to have everyone involved. And I think if you have a story worth telling, you probably should tell it. I would say that. I think in closing, my last comment would be, maybe at some future point, we'll share with you what we're doing next in regards to helping hundreds of students tap into the internet from their home for the very first time.
I can't wait. So stay tuned. We will be back with more, and follow us on social and see how the movement progresses. Mylo, thank you so much for being here today. So enjoy your spirit, your humility, your determination, and you've inspired us to do more. So thank you for being our guide, and so appreciate what you've done, and looking forward to the next step in the movement and making sure that people have more. Now we open it up for questions.